So everybody needs an ego because we can't actually be in the world if we don't have an ego. But what's interesting is, I think at this point in time, if we see some egos as being a little bit more difficult than others, then it's looking at, in the corporate environment, how do those egos, different types of egos, interact with each other to have a positive outcome?
Yeah. And do you know what's funny, Caroline, is my ego was always having to be strong. Was always have to be the strong one within an environment, within the workplace. Yet I have a soft ego. There's a lot of softness and care and compassion that I hold. And so it was kind of a protection mechanism that was there to protect myself, in the face of, the different environments that I was exposed to and the different personalities. And so I had to be strong, but yet there was times that I wanted to choose to be soft. And so I danced around with my personality to work through that. But it's, and so it's an interesting piece and it's an interesting conversation for us to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah. So welcome everybody into our conversation here. But we wanted to really look at this because as we talk about, the flexible psychology is one of the top skills for leadership at the moment. And just becoming aware, our mission is for you to become aware of your leadership style. And we talk about dominant leaders and the avoidant leader and the compassionate leader. And when we look at this type of identity that we create within ourselves, as you've alluded to, becomes developed in sometimes because of the environment that we've had to work in or how we've grown up. And all of us have different default, identities within ourselves. I would like to say rather than the ego, but it's our default identity. And as you alluded there to, that sometimes our default identity is created for protection. So like that, sometimes we have to toughen ourselves up for an environment that we feel we might need to be a little bit stronger in. But at this time in humanity, we're in a huge time of change. We're in, this massive melting pot of change where adaptability is really important. So it's really important to look now just around our awareness of how am I showing up in my identity, and can that become more flexible for these times, and can we flex our identity, as you just demonstrated, is possible to go from a fixed identity, more flexible identity in your journey of developing yourself as a leader. Love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I love that, Caroline. And let's play with that a little bit. Let's play with it from the point of view of, if you were to show up, say, as the dominant leader, and you were sitting in the avoidant leader, and if I keep on showing up and showing dominance over you, Caroline, and saying, right, Caroline, you need to do this, you need to get this task done, you need to get it done today, how is that going to be received by you? And is there a partnership being formed by being in that identity or being in that ego type? And this is where we can kind of really pull it apart, Caroline, and going, is this serving me to turn up this way, or is it disserving? So that's where we can simultaneously go, right, what do I want to access, or what do I need to access? Which gives us that flexibility, and see how I'm moving my body and, to move into it. Or we can say stuck. Yes. We can stay stuck, Caroline, and fixed, as you said. We can stay fixed. No, I'm not going to move. I'm just going to be the dominant leader today. I'm going to keep on being the dominant leader, and I'm going to notice that you're pulling away, Caroline. You're pulling away from me, and I'm not getting my commercial outcomes. I'm not getting my outcomes. And so as a leader, and whilst, Caroline, I have so much compassion for the leaders at the moment, because there's so much pressure, there's so much challenge going on within a lot of corporate environments, and I have a genuine concern for people and leaders, and going, so how are we adapting? How are we moving through this? how are we processing and working in partnership with others to build sustainable businesses?
To build relationships. And that's the bridge to success, isn't it? And we always talk about, building that bridge to success. And I think really what it is, that is the default. So if you have a lot of pressure on, people will tend to want to get things done really quickly. But what's happening there is that we're not resourcing ourselves, because we have all these amazing staff around us who can actually do the job really well. But we are taking too much responsibility for getting the job done ourselves and feel we need to dominate ourselves and to get it done. But actually, if we can just become aware that that's a tendency, that our personality or identity is, that we can actually sit back a little bit and use a little bit more of the avoidant leader and say, take a pause and say, okay, how can I strategically communicate my needs so that the people on my team can get the job done? Because I want them to, they're my resource, I don't need to do it all. I don't need to be that controlling. I can actually I can communicate instead of control with the team exactly what I need, what my needs are, and allow them to do it for me. There's a difference there, isn't there?
I love that, Caroline. And I just want to add to that is you're then accessing the compassionate leader. You're accessing those parts of the compassionate leader to bring into that dominance and sit behind that in order to then access that as a resource within someone else. We're actually being more compassionate to ourselves as leaders and not holding on to that identity or that ego type. And this is the thing, Caroline, everyone thinks it's a dirty word. Oh my God, that person's got an ego. Oh my God, yes, we all have. But it doesn't have to be a dirty word. And I just feel like that we just need to understand it a bit more, because it really just talks to our identity and our protection and the default that you shared as well. And that's what we keep on stepping back into. But how can we step forward and move forward into that compassion to become resourceful? So I love what you've just shared. It's just absolutely brilliant.
Well, that's where we're moving back into design. We talk about going from default to design. And what I'd love to highlight as well, that an ego can also be the shy one, that's also an ego. And people often, they think of a dominant leader as somebody who is very forceful, and that's an ego. But actually, the shy person is an ego as well, because they're sitting back and they're not contributing consciously. Because why? Maybe there's perfectionism. Maybe they feel like they're not good enough. Maybe they feel that they don't want to lose out, and it's a safer place to be. Because there's more, when you put yourself out there, you're on the edge, and that's why leaders are always on the cutting edge, and they tend to be the ones who take action and move forward. And fortune favors the bold, really, so it's the ones who do take action are the ones who make that change. But I would love people just to become aware of that we can become flexible in that, where it's like the accordion in Ireland, it goes in and out. So we can actually be out and we can be dominant, but we can pull back in again, and we can take time to consider our actions and whether we want other people to help us make a decision, to help us get a goal, achieved. And also with the avoidant, how can we move forward and become more resourceful in sharing what we have ourselves for the greater good, for the team, not holding on to everything, and not sharing what we feel we can share. Because I would say love to share personally. I used to be more on that level where I would sit back and find it more difficult to bring my voice forward, because I was triggered by the dominant leader. But as I've grown in myself, and as I've become more aware of my own design, or my default, I've become much more, I would say, I value the dominant leader position in their action steps, because I love that they have the courage to move forward. And I've definitely taken that on more in my own personality and allowed myself to be braver and bolder. And I feel that has really up-leveled me in my leadership, because it's that beautiful blend of both the dominant and the avoidant, and then the compassionate leader that brings it together. It's like that triangle that moves us forward, and everybody wins then. It's not just one particular ego that is seemingly wanting to get to the top. We're all getting there together.
Yeah, we're moving together. We're moving the parts to build that, or to cross that bridge, Caroline. And what I really loved is how you shared that even as part of the avoidant leader, that you are creating some sort of ego within that space, you know, or pulling back. And that is a type. And then what I notice, and tell me if this is true for you as well, that being avoidant, that we're building more up in our system, that we're therefore then looking at blame out there to the dominant leader, and not actually seeing that we can actually use our voice, but we just need to actually open up those channels. And like what you beautifully explained is that you taught yourself and trained yourself to actually go from this back position to stepping in to start using your voice. And you were acknowledging how brave and bold the dominant leader was. So all the egos are serving, you know, some sort of position. We're actually stepping into position.
Yes.
But I suppose the beauty of this, and I'll be curious to know where you want to take this, is how, you know, the dominant leader, and I've, you know, taken on that role many times, but equally I've actually taught myself to hold the avoidant leader, to allow others who are sitting in that position to speak. And so I've invited people to come into those conversations because I'm open to hearing their voice. I'm open to hearing other egos, and it could be a creative ego. It could be, you know, an investigative mind. It could be the perfectionist. You know, it's really inviting all these ego types in to be heard and seen. And this is what I feel is an opportunity for us as leaders to really start to notice, you know, how we're showing up, and that awareness to then be able to see that in another.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, what actually happened with me when I changed my style, dialed it up. I took an up style. I noticed that the dominant leader that I was dealing with softened. So when I actually took more charge and I came forward, they relaxed. So actually I realized they were stressed. It was stress that was leading that kind of dominant leadership. So it was a stress that they were scared, they were frightened, they were taking on too much responsibility. And I realized that. I realized what they need is me to be more helpful. And I use my qualities that I have of a really soft voice and being very nurturing and very helpful, and seeing problems before they arise and coming to them with solutions, being very solution focused, and always being seen. Then my identity became, she's the solution, the girl with the solution, you know. And then people think of me, oh, there's Caroline, she's got the solution, she's the calm one, you know. And then that helped me come forward because I had value in myself, you know. I valued myself hugely, and my voice was very valuable, and that I could see how I was such a huge resource then to the leaders, and then they could relax, you know. And the same with any consultancy piece, you know, that you're the one who's coming in to calm the storm and to take control, and they can let you take more control, allows them to take less control, need less control.
And in hearing that, Caroline, I'm actually receiving that. So as a dominant leader, I'm actually really feeling that. And I'm actually going, I don't have to be over responsible. So that's what came to mind when you were just sharing that I don't have to be over responsible, putting extra energy in, because you're actually stepping forward, because I've kind of stepped back a bit. So that I really felt that whole motion of adjustment, the flexing, you know, of that personality, of that ego type, and really just softening that, because I had to be strong.